Zomato also used to tuck, 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 tuck,
Right.
and the work is done. And in IKEA, you discuss this with one person, then you set a SOP around it, then you do this, then you do that. Like it's a whole process of a 10-step thing to get to the same objective that you would have probably done in half. When you're very early on in your career, you don't need to say no because you're learning. You are starting from the scratch. Wellness means that you are fully functional, and stress kisko nahi hota. One thing that I feel lacks in a lot of corporates across India is empathy. Work sometimes becomes so much pressure that you need an escape from it, and that's when you say, I want to do life. So in your time, in your day, you are doing different types of meditation across the day.
How working at these organizations kind of changed your view of work-life balance? Welcome to this podcast. In today's episode, we're going to touch upon the aspects of work, personal life, and how we can find synergies between the two. Today, we are in conversation with Tushita Kapoor, who is the Chief Officer of Ecosystem Solutions at Retire 100. She has more than 9 years of experience, and she has worked very hard in achieving the work and personal life balance. So let's begin. Hi, Tushita. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Thiral. Thank you for having me.
Firstly, you've had an incredible career, right? You've worked with Zomato, which is a very unconventional company when it comes to, say, people culture, hiring, everything related to Zomato is unconventional. And IKEA, which is again a very huge global company. So could you tell us something more about how working at these organizations kind of changed your view of work-life balance and what the culture was there?
Yeah. I think with Zomato and IKEA, they were like two ends of the spectrum when it comes to culture. Because in Zomato, our theme, our vision, everything was around 1% done. Like the whole culture was hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And IKEA instead was, a slow and steady company. They build the foundation first. They make sure they get the principles right and only then scale up. So for me, I think the incredible experience that you talk about, it was just to be a part of the 0 to 1 journey in both of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And work culture in both companies was super, 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 super important. Like having a flat structure, no hierarchy based principles to follow, so to speak. So I think, yeah, it was incredible learnings. Like I can't even verbalize what are the kind of learnings because it's the experience that you have, the quality of the interaction you have, the way people think, you look up to those people. And that's how you actually grow in life. And that's how I believe I have also grown in life through this period.
So you worked at Zomato first and then IKEA?
Yeah, Zomato was my first job, very first job, like straight out of college. एक छोटा सा उनका walk-in interview था. I was a part of that, and out of like the 30-40 people who had come, there was a group of 3 of us who got selected for the job. So yeah, that's how Zomato happened. And then after I left Zomato, I was in Gurgaon for a little bit of time, and then I had to come back to Bombay because my mom over here was all alone. So because of that, IKEA happened, and IKEA जैसे ही मैंने ज्वाइन किया 11 दिन में लॉकडाउन लग गया. So my IKEA journey was also during the lockdown. So we got a lot of more time to incubate ideas, to discuss ideas, to develop a togetherness, to develop a team spirit, which earlier I didn't have the luxury to do because it was all a hustle culture there. So yeah, experienced both ends of the spectrum, and it's been fun so far.
Yeah, that's what I was coming at. Like from going from the hustle to a slower, like a very settled, very foundation-based work culture. That transition, was it simple or was it something that was very difficult? कि अरे लोग काम क्यों नहीं कर रहे? ये ऐसे फटाफट क्यों नहीं हो रहा? Was it like that?
Yeah, it was very difficult. But then, when you actually slow down and you get the luxury of time to just think things through, that's also a big win. But to adjust to the change, it was not. I would get frustrated very easily because in Zomato, I was so used to tuck, 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 tuck,
Right.
and the work is done. And in IKEA, you discuss this with one person, then you set a SOP around it, then you do this, then you do that. Like it's a whole process of a 10-step thing to get to the same objective that you could have probably done in half an hour.
Got it.
But slowly and surely is a better way. That this is now in retrospect that I understand that slowly and surely is a better way of building things than just a startup culture. Whereas when you are looking for productivity, when you are looking at results, a hustle culture serves you much better than a slow and steady pace.
So like a company just starting out needs to have the hustle to then get to that slow and steady
Correct.
pace.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Because they say, no, too many cooks spoil the broth. So not to let too many cooks spoil the broth, you have to slow down your pace too.
Got it. That's very interesting. I did not know that about IKEA actually. I thought it would be a very similar culture, but it's good to know. So while we were discussing the podcast, we coined this term called productive wellness. So could you tell our audience something more about what productive wellness means?
I think we should take a step back to understand productive wellness. So there are different types of wellnesses. There is emotional wellness, there is spiritual wellness, there is physical wellness, there is mental wellness, environmental wellness, social wellness. So all of that in combination, when it is very well balanced in your life, you become a fully functional human being who's working in a very mindful manner. And that stage is something I like to call productive wellness.
Got it. Is there a way where a person can realize that, oh, now I am like being productive and I am healthy? Like it's a very thin line. Often I feel people are said that, oh, agar tumhe job se happiness milti hai, then you are like a toxic worker. You are like, you overwork or stuff like that. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's very subjective, na? It is very case to case. Not all fingers are alike.
Same.
Not every human is alike. Not every mind is alike.
Okay.
When you talk about health, normally we say it means that you are free of disease. That's health. But wellness means that you are fully functional with or without that freement of your disease, basically.
Got it.
Freement, nahi, free.
Yeah.
So free of disease is not necessarily wellness. That's a distinguishment that I think I have learned over the course of time. And I don't think workaholics are, mad or they are crazy. I feel they have a lot of passion for what they are driving. So when you see a very passionate person, a very motivated person, they will probably like to work even 16 hours a day, 17 hours a day, maybe more, versus a person who is not aligned with the objective that they're trying to achieve. Then they start seeing work as a task कि मुझे ये बस करना है. So just to tick off the box, they do it. So as a self-driven person, you can actually work 24 hours as well, because the reality is you never know when an idea comes to you.
Got it.
You never
Exactly.
know what happens with you. So for them, they will go home, but they still won't leave work. They'll be thinking about work. दिमाग में ऐसा आया, oh, I missed that. They'll go and correct that.
Right.
Versus somebody who's just looking forward to shut my day off.
Weekends.
Yes. I'm working 9 to 5 just to get through Monday to Friday, and then I want to enjoy my weekend, because they look forward more to enjoying life than only just focusing on work.
Got it. And that brings me to my next question. Do you think stress prevails in high-performing individuals?
Yeah, but high-performing individuals probably have cracked how to manage stress, which is why they are high-performing individuals. And stress किसको नहीं होता? मतलब everywhere it's a different form of stress. High performing individuals will have a different form of stress. Low performing individuals will have a different form of stress. The mid performing individuals will have a different form of stress. They will have the stress कि यार मैं इसके जैसे कैसे बनूं. Whereas they need to understand that I can't emulate anybody. I have my own set of skill set. I have to capitalize on what are my skill set, and that's how we contribute. It's similar to आप कहते हो ना कि 5 उंगली अलग है, एक करो तो मुट्ठी बनेगी. तो you have to make sure that the team comes along to have one vision. They are working towards one objective, one goal, and that's when you will see the stress fizzle away. Because in a team, if you and I are a team, there'll be some days when I'm 100% not myself. My productivity will not be there. So you pick up where I'm slacking. Versus there'll be days when you are not be able to give your 100%. You are at 50% capacity. So I can step in to make sure that your 50% is 100%.
Got it. That's very well said, because I think that getting that essence in a team is very important for any organization, for any, like even if you do a college project, you need like everyone to contribute something to it, right?
Correct.
So that's very well said. Now that brings me to boundaries. I think boundaries in personal life is very important. It's like, okay, you know this person is not treating you well. You can break a friendship, you can break a relationship, you can, ignore them, block them right out. How difficult is it to say no at a workplace? Do you be this person who says yes and becomes a people pleaser? Because at work, it's a conception that you have to be in the good books to kind of succeed in your career, to go ahead in your career. Do you be that person, or do you be a person who says no, I do not have the bandwidth, I cannot do this, and set the boundaries right there?
I used to be a people pleaser. Like for the longest time in my career, मुझे काम बोला जाता था इसीलिए मैं करती थी. Whether or not it aligned with my personal goals, whether or not it aligned with my professional goals, बस ऊपर से आया, बॉस ने बोला है तो कर दो. So I used to be a people pleaser, but now I've evolved to become a person who is not a people pleaser. Until and unless I understand the why of the job that I need to do, I won't put my energy into doing it, because that why should be important enough to drive me to do that job. But where you said drawing boundaries, I think at a certain stage of your career, it's important to draw those boundaries because you don't have bandwidth.
Yeah.
So if you are trying to deliver something which is out of your bandwidth, you end up overworking, then you go to a burnout kind of a stage,
Right.
and all of that happens. Versus when you're very early on in your career, you don't need to say no because you're learning. You are starting from the scratch. When you accept projects that you probably don't think you have the skill set for, is where your learning curve comes, right?
Got it.
But having said that, I think in a professional environment, you can't normalize saying no. The only reason you can't normalize saying no is because then there'll be some people in the mix who take advantage of it, right? So we can't normalize it. But I would always say that when you start having bandwidth issues is when you start saying no to things and prioritize those things that are very important for you. And even if you have to say yes to those things, then you put it in a backlog and you say, I'm working towards it, but I have these priorities that I need to finish first, and only then I can go to that.
Got it. I also agree with what you said, because saying no would be like create an havoc. Like it would just be like, nahi, mujhe mood nahi hai,
No,
main nahi
sorry,
karunga. I'm
nahi
sorry. But yeah, I do agree to that. And I think sometimes people who work harder, who are always at their 100%, when they say no, it comes like a surprise. Like, oh, isne
How?
kyun na bola? Like, and then that's when they kind of, everyone needs to start to learn, like set boundaries and say like, okay, boss, this is my limit, this is what I can do, and this is how much I can manage.
And I think one thing that I feel lacks in a lot of corporates across India is empathy. To step into another person's shoes and think कि यार ये no क्यों बोल रहा है, because there's always convincing. आप अपने friend को कुछ नहीं करना है, like if they don't want to go on a vacation, you try to convince them, नहीं यार गोवा चलते हैं, बहुत मूड है, ये weekend है, खर्चे जो भी होंगे हम संभालेंगे, right? So that's a level of convincing that you anyway do in your daily life. So understanding the why and getting to the root cause, and then trying to convince somebody, that empathy level you should have, so that you understand where this person is coming from and why they are saying that no that they are saying.
No, yeah, it's very important. That kind of brings me to productivity. And many people think that when you're at work, you need to be at your 100%. Like they struggle with being productive for 8 to 9 hours. Firstly, what do you think of this thought process that there is work mode and there is enjoyment mode? So you work 9 to 5, you finish your work, you're like full hustle, and then 5 ke baad you enjoy your life. Okay? First question is that, like, what do you think of that culture? And for someone who struggles to be productive, do you have any methods that could help the person probably, think of how to prioritize it or how to kind of be more productive in their daily life?
Yeah. So I'll answer your first questions first. You cannot be productive all 8 to 9 hours of the workday. There are some people who are very, very disciplined. They have conditioned their body to work like that. Every day, wake up at 7 o'clock, have breakfast at 7:30, leave for office at 8 o'clock, reach office at 9 o'clock, work for this, take the break at 1 o'clock. Some people have conditioned themselves to work like a very mechanical machine. And for these people, it comes out very easily. But for most people, it's not. Like we were discussing earlier, right? You can't decide when an idea strikes you. You can't decide when you're feeling hungry. Maybe, usually I feel hungry at 1 o'clock, but today I missed my breakfast, so I'm hungry at 12 o'clock, right? to manage your day and break it down into like minute by minute or hour by hour, it's very, very difficult. Which is why probably London is experimenting with 4-day work weeks, because they realize that maybe that is something that can lead to efficiency so that a person can have a proper work-life balance.
Got it.
So in my opinion, तो वो नहीं होता
नहीं
है.
होगा.
And to answer your question to the second part, I can only tell from my experience what has helped me. And what has helped me is taking frequent breaks. Like, you know, instead of taking one long lunch break, I try to take 5-minute breaks every couple of hours. Just go out in the air, out of the AC environment, because I don't like ACs too much. Go out, take a deep breath, like just take out 5 minutes of time for myself to understand, am I being normal, am I being productive, am I mindful in this moment? Because I don't do things just for the sake of doing it. I like to do things because I believe that I'm driving something which is a greater purpose out of that. So yeah, this exercise has helped me. Then amongst my friends and all, music is one of the things that helps a lot. So they, like, you know, put your earphones on in your break, you listen to music, it automatically changes the energy pattern that's going on in your body. So yeah, different things work for different people, but these are 2 hacks that I know work for sure.
So at my previous organizations also, my manager used to listen to this focused work music when she used to write or when she used to do something, and you could see the drive in her eyes. But she used to listen to music to kind of help her focus, help her ground, and, you know, be more concentrated in what she was doing. So I think, like you said, it's different things for different people, and everyone just has to figure out what works for them.
Correct.
But taking this 5-minute break every 2 hours is a very it's like ठीक है, ये just 5 minutes and then my break is coming up, so you can, like, you know, push yourself to work on days that you don't feel like.
Correct.
Talking of taking breaks and like stretching yourself to like complete a work day, how important is it to look after your mental health to achieve the optimum level of productivity?
That's a very, very straightforward question for me, because for me the answer is always yes. But think about it in this way कि अगर आपको बुखार है, बहुत तेज बुखार है, क्या आप ऑफिस पे आके 100% प्रोडक्टिव होगे? नहीं होगे, right? But mental wellness is a thing, or a mental health issue is a thing that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel, it's not tangible. But a person is going through a war in their own heads, which others will not be able to understand. So the answer is no. If you're struggling from some issue mentally, or even if you're struggling from a dilemma, then you are not 100% yourself. You will not be at 100% productivity. And by the way, different people's productivity level mean different things. A person who is a very, very high achiever, even if they're working at a 20-30% mental capacity, their work is still going to be really, really awesome. Versus a person who really pushes themselves to be at 100% efficiency on a daily basis, unka 1% also of a mental problem will make a severe impact in the quality of the work that they're delivering.
Got it.
So I think it's very, very important to address this. And now I think India is becoming a lot more open to mental health as a whole concept. When I was in IKEA, they used to have mindfulness sessions for every day when we started work. So that 5 minutes of mindfulness session will put you into a zone to have a great work for the rest of the day. So taking initiatives like this when the HR does it, it's for the well-being of the employee, and I think these initiatives are very, very important.
Very helpful. At my previous organization, every day before we began work, we used to do a 2-minute gratitude meditation. So I used to work at a yoga company, so it was only right that we kind of practiced what we preach. So we used to do this gratitude meditation, and then everyone would just be like, okay, now we can like begin the day, now let the madness begin, because now you're grounded, right? And talking about work-life balance, I recently saw a video by Simon Sinek, and he said something very interesting. He said that he does not look at work-life balance, because when you say work-life balance, you're placing work and life at opposite spectrums, and then you're kind of balancing between the two. He said instead of that, we should look at a smoother transitioning between the two. What it essentially means is that just like you cannot decide, like you said, right? You don't know when you will get an idea.
Correct.
So you can get an idea on an off day. You will still be like, okay, I have this idea, I'll jot it down.
Correct.
So you're working in those 5 minutes.
Correct.
And similarly, when you're working, if it's a nice sunny day, you should go outside. You should have the flexibility to go outside and probably go for a run, or you should have the flexibility that if you're not feeling 100%, take a 5-minute break, do your meditation, come back and rest. While this exercise of having a smoother work and personal life transitioning may not be entirely adaptable by the audiences today, uh, could you tell us how someone can make it sustainable in their daily life by small habits, especially now that people are working from home? I think there is a bit of flexibility to sneak this habit in and be like, okay, I'm just going to step away for 5 minutes and then going to come back
to this. Yeah.
to this. So, how do you think people can make it like a sustainable habit?
I think it comes from breaking certain stigmas that we are following right now. For example, judgment in a workplace is something that weighs very heavily on people's shoulders, right? If I take too many breaks today, what will this person think?
Got it.
What will my boss think?
Yeah.
Will it change my impression in people's eyes? I don't want to become a bad person. If I leave early today, will people question it 10 times? You know? So all of those stigmas that run behind in a person's mind, which is blocking them to live work as if it's life. Because life is everyday, life is 24/7.
Right.
The reason why we have to talk about work-life balance is because work sometimes becomes so much pressure that you need an escape from it. And that's when you say, I want to do life. And that's where the whole concept of work-life balance comes in.
Right?
What if your work was so smooth that you are living it as a life and you enjoy doing it? Think about it this way. Today, I'm not feeling very productive. I go to my manager and I say, I'm not feeling very productive. The quality of work that is coming from me as an output, it's not good enough. Because I think probably somewhere in the back of my mind, my family is running. My child has an annual day and I'm not present there and it's hampering me from doing that. If the manager is a nice person, they'll be like, it's okay. You take the half day off, you go, you enjoy your child's annual day and then you come back to us. But are we in a mental space to transparently talk about these things
Got
or
it.
ask these things from our managers? The moment we start doing that, we start building a culture of transparency. Today, I'm at 50%. Yesterday, I was at 150%. So today, I'll allow myself to leave from work 1 hour early if I have to, because something is happening in my personal life. So when we bring it out, when there's an acknowledgement, when there's no judgment around people coming out with all of this, is when we start to transition towards that work-life transition that Simon Sinek is speaking.
Right. And I think also the awareness of, oh, I am not at my 100%. Thinking of that as, okay, I'm not at 100% rather than, oh, I'm not doing well enough, which then goes into imposter syndrome and it goes into self-doubt and all of those things. I think that awareness, that, kind of differentiation is very important for the person.
Absolutely.
To get and to understand it for themselves, right? And I think we were also talking about meditation and you said something very interesting. That you visited an Osho ashram and that kind of changed your perspective on meditation.
Yeah.
Could you kind of share that with the audience?
So very recently for work, I had visited the Osho ashram in Pune. By the way, the environment there is serene, calm, like really zen. So for those people who believe in aura, I feel the aura of the ashram is very different.
Got it.
But I was in the mindset of I'm going there for some work, so I'll do that work and come. But in the 5-minute conversation that I had with the representative there, they had told me that right now you are also meditating. But right now what you're doing is called work meditation. So in your time, in your day, you are doing different types of meditation across the day. Sometime you will be doing your work meditation. Sometime you will be doing your food meditation, which is while eating, basically mindfully eating. Sometimes you will be just doing a relaxed meditation where you're just lying down and not thinking about anything, doing nothing. So I think meditation as a concept has very less awareness globally.
Right.
It has so many benefits, and which is why, there are different types. There are 450 different types of meditation.
Wow.
Did we know about this? No. I also found out about it recently. You learn new things every day. So that's where it comes from. I think once you are aware that meditation does not only mean ki sadhu ki tareh baith jao or dhyan karo or om japo. That's not the only form of meditation. There are so many different types of meditation and each has a different benefit. Because stress has become very, very common common in our life today. Some people know how to deal with stress, and they know how to, like, some people like to run. When they're stressed, they'll run, they'll sweat it out, it's out of their body. But some people internalize their stress. Those people who internalize their stress are unknowingly causing their subconscious to cause illnesses in them.
Oh.
So there are very many things. If you like to research about it, there is Vipassana meditation. There is, of course, Osho meditation, where you can actually go enroll and do all of this. But that awareness that I shouldn't internalize my stress, rather I should use tools which are easily available in the market to help me manage and eradicate my stress altogether, is when you achieve that happiness quotient, so to speak, where you're living life just not because you have to. You're living life because you actually love to live it.
Yeah. And I think stress is also not linear, right?
No.
You get stressed when you can't find your phone. You, like, those small triggers are also something that you have to be like, okay, it's fine. You have to, like, be mindful of things like that.
I think stress triggers, sometimes while they may be external, a lot of times they are internal. Also. You may have lived a childhood where you've had some childhood traumas that you never spoke about to a therapist, and now those childhood traumas cause stress triggers to you, and because of which your mind actually changes in the way it thinks. From an optimistic mindset, you suddenly go into a pessimistic mindset. So being aware of why are you behaving the way you behave, it's a very underrated thing in today's world. Even if you know yourself a little better, you'll understand how to manage your stress a lot
better. Right. So my next question was around triggers. Can you talk about your experience, if you are comfortable to share? What triggers have you noticed when you realize that, oh, this is stressing me out, so this is my trigger? And how do you combat that? What kind of tricks do you use to manage that stress better?
I think for me, one of the biggest realizations I had was why I don't like shopping. So all girls are expected, stereotyping. All girls are supposed to love shopping. But I don't enjoy shopping. Like going to the malls, picking out clothes and everything, I don't enjoy. And then one day I was just thinking back, why is this experience something that I don't enjoy? I realized because in a lot of brands, I am not able to find my size. That is why this whole experience of shopping for me is stressful, because it makes me feel like I am not normal, I am abnormal. And then these are the things that are indicators that not having my size in a shop means I'm abnormal. I thought back to it again. I was sitting one day and I reflected, and I realized in my childhood people used to call me Motu, Golu, all of these little things, Kaddu, Bhopla. Now, these are ways to tease people, but unknowingly, subconsciously, they have become my childhood trauma, where I have a fear of being fat. It's not, as long as you're healthy, it's okay what your size is. But in my today's day and age, it is manifesting as a fear of shopping. So you have to always think back to your childhood experiences. You have to sit, reflect. Sometimes you can't do it alone, so you can reach out to a therapist, you can reach out to a friend. You can use them as a bouncing tool to actually break it down to why are these things causing you triggers. And how do I know I'm triggered? I don't enjoy doing certain things. That's where I realized that this is my trigger. Or while doing certain activities, I may completely zone out. That's when I realized something has happened here, that's my trigger. So if you are a little reflecting in your thinking, and if you have the luxury of time, by the way, people don't have the luxury of time in today's world. So they have to remove time for themselves to sit and think back to all of this and realize, why am I doing a certain thing in a certain way? And that's when I can make a little more progress in my life. And how to manage triggers really is about drawing boundaries. When you said earlier, in a workplace, it's difficult to draw boundaries. And I completely am cognizant of that. But in personal life, it is not difficult to draw boundaries, because you are living with your support system, your friends, your parents, your extended family. These are people who are supposed to be your non-judgmental support system, in front of whom you can be completely what you want. So drawing boundaries here is something that helps you. No, I'm not going to do this because I'm feeling this way. And that's when your support system will help you. don't feel this way, it's okay, hota hai logon ke paas, they'll change your mood by cracking a lame joke or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So having a very good support system in your life is very important to make sure that the triggers don't impact your behaviors in a long term.
Yeah, I think thank you firstly for sharing that experience. It would have not been easy to do so.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do agree that, you know, managing it is very important as having a, you know, solid support system. But what do you do when these triggers kind of manifest at work? How do you kind of deal with them when you face these triggers at work? Like, of course, you cannot be like, oh, I don't want to, मैं रोने लगूंगी अब, ये तो नहीं होगा at work. So how do you kind of deal with that kind of stuff?
I'll take you back a little bit to Pavlov's experiment. Do you know what Pavlov's experiment is?
No.
So there was a dog that Pavlov had, and every day at a certain point of time, he would ring the bell and then give the dog food. So he was conditioning the dog that whenever the bell will ring, food will come to you.
Got it.
After a certain point of time passed, he saw that I'm ringing the bell and the dog has started salivating. Why? Because the dog is expecting food. Now, if you apply this to our life, from the day we are enrolled into education system, we are being conditioned for a reward system. अच्छे marks लाओ, better घड़ी मिलेगी, golden star मिलेगा, अच्छे marks लाओ, अच्छे कॉलेज में एडमिशन होगी, कॉलेज में आपने अच्छा परफॉर्म किया तो जॉब अच्छी लगेगी, बहुत सारा पैसा मिलेगा. So we have been conditioned to live by a reward system. That's our conditioning. Everybody's conditioning system. So what do? You reward yourself for not giving into your triggers.
Okay.
Small celebrations. Today, I spoke up in a meeting, which is something I've not done for the last 1 week. Today, I placed my opinion outside. I'm going to give myself a chocolate. So the moment you start rewarding yourself for doing good behaviors, just because you are conditioning like that, the good behaviors become your norm. Instead of you acting on your triggers, now you will act on the way you want to lead yourself.
Yeah, that will kind of help you change in a very sustainable manner, because who doesn't deserve a treat?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And that brings me to my next question, which is work-life balance looks different for everyone.
Correct.
Right? For you, it's a 5-minute break. For me, probably it's a weekend getaway.
Correct.
For someone else, it's working 14 hours a day and feeling like, oh, I have
accomplished
something, right? What are the indicators that people can look out for to say that, okay, I am on the right track?
Their quotient of happiness. I think the reason why you like weekend getaways is because you come back fresh of the mind, right? That freshness of the mind is very, very pivotal for you to move in the right direction. If you don't have the freshness of your mind, or if your mind is fatigued, no matter how much you want to, you are just not able to deliver that. And you get a certain sense of happiness. That driving that sense of happiness in you. So let's talk about, if somebody is doing really good at work and they're enjoying it, that's a, utopian scenario. That's an ideal case scenario. But in real life, aisa hota nahi hai. Out of the 300 days odd that you are coming to work, maybe like 250 days or 200 days will be good, 100 days are still going to be bad. So how do you deal with yourself in those 100 days? What do you do to not let those 100 days take away from what you are doing in those 200 days? I think that for me, in my, realizations, that for me has been how I've achieved a happiness quotient.
Okay.
Because I have bad days at work. I still do. I used to also, I still do. But now what has changed is how I deal with them. I acknowledge today has been a bad day. I announce it. Like when I go home, I tell my family that today was a bad day. I need a pick-me-up. So I'll get a hug, or we'll go out for a movie, or we'll do something to cheer my mood up. And then I'm coming back with a fresh mindset that yesterday was a bad day, put it behind. I think we can learn from India's cricket team how to do that. They had recently lost a World Cup, which was not on their side at all. What if they would have stayed in the same mindset? Ki yaar, it's going to repeat. We've not lost any match. It is literally a repeat case of the North scenario. What happened last time is happening this time also. We've not lost a match. That means final mein kuch to gadbad hone wala hai. But they did not keep their mindset like that, right? They kept their mindset ki I want to change what happened last time. I am going to aid those behaviors. I'm going to put 10,000% more effort, but this time I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
So I think that mindset to bring in yourself, a positive mindset, super, super important.
How do you calculate this happiness quotient? Do you have like a marker saying, oh, today my mood is sad, today my mood is happy? How does someone know their happiness quotient? Like, how do you find it?
I sense it. I mean, everybody can do it differently, but I sense it with my body language and my
Okay.
tone of voice.
Okay.
On a particular day when I'm feeling an energy surge, I'll be very peppy. I'll be very bouncy. I'll be very, mazakia. I'll crack jokes, very lame jokes, but I'll still crack them, right? Versus on a day when I'm down, my shoulders will be down.
Hunched,
I'll be a little
right.
defeated.
Right.
I'll be very slow in my walking pace. So at least this is how, my support system and I identify which are my good days and which are my bad days.
Got it. That's very interesting to know. I think this someone can do for themselves. Like when you are just feeling low for no reason, maybe you're having a bad day. It's not just about that day. Coming to my last question. How is streamlining your mental health today going to help you become a healthier person tomorrow? We talk about mental health from like an investing perspective. If you say you invest X amount of money today, 10 years down the line, that X money is going to become 10X.
Correct.
So how does doing that for your mental health help you become healthier tomorrow? What are the long-term benefits of having a good work-life balance, if we specifically talk about that topic?
See, in today's world, unfortunately, fortunately, I would say we are in the middle of a digitalization revolution. There was a set of people in the world who saw the industrial revolution. Similarly, what we are seeing now is the digital revolution. In this, what I observe is people's attention spans are going down because we are so used to reels and shorts and everything that our attention span is coming down. How will I compound investing in my mental health is by removing these barriers and these boulders that I'm putting on my old shoulder. I have to post certain number of stories on social media so that people think my life is cool.
Yeah.
I found that this is the new fad of going to a cafe and having this coffee. I'm going to follow this and do it. So there's this social persona that we want to display that we are versus what we are in real life. Now, the moment you remove that baggage or that responsibility from your shoulders now, your mental health will automatically start getting better because now you are not doing certain things to show to people. You are doing certain things for your own betterment. If that means leaving a company in 3 months because you don't feel it's a culture fit, because you don't feel it's a passion fit, normalize that. It's okay. When you're taking an interview, don't judge people on that 3 months ka work duration.
Yeah.
Judge them on what they have presented themselves as in the interview. So I think normalizing a lot of things and also stop putting things in a black and white bucket. Always always acknowledge the gray area. So it's not black and white, it is always gray. And be okay with working in that gray area, which means you probably don't know. It's okay for you to not know that you're mentally unwell. But read the signs, or when your support system is coming back to you and telling you that, hey, I'm observing that from the last week you're a little down. Don't just brush it off. Pay attention to what people are saying. Because if your mental wellness is not great, similar to your physical wellness, you will reach a burnout point. And then getting you back from that burnout point is going to take help from experts.
Yeah.
You won't be able to do it yourself. So don't let yourself reach that burnout point. See the signs. Take proactive care to make sure that you don't see the signs in the future. And I think that would be the shortcut of making sure your mental wellness is in place.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for this very insightful, and I thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation. I think we could go on and on about many other things, but I think we should wrap up here. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dhiral. You were an amazing person to chat with.
Thank you.